fats during prep. This one we kind of need the description. So is 20 grams of fat 6 weeks out from a show okay for a woman in bodybuilding, starting to crash a little, joints are starting to hurt? I don't think so. I'll say this. Protein, 1 gram per pound of body weight, maybe a little bit higher if we have the room to do that. I don't really bring protein under 1 gram, but for fats, I'm kind of diligent there too, that I don't want it under 40 grams unless someone's really far behind. And in that case, I'm not like thrilled to be lowering fats. And truth be told, like that's happened, I can say like maybe 2 times with an athlete, very much towards the end of prep. In the instance that someone, I mean, like even think about it this way, break it down, 20 grams of fats times 9. I mean, like we're talking about 180 calories. So if you need 180 calories back, if that's like what we're talking about, you could do a little more cardio, you could do a little more steps depending on where those are at. If you're an enhanced athlete, I mean, that's approximately what you'd be looking at if you were to use a fat loss agent. I don't love the idea of 20 grams of fat in prep that far out. I've done it. I early on in my career, I went extremely low fat. You have to understand that the biosynthesis of hormones starts with fat. So whenever we slash those and like get really aggressive with reducing fats, dietary fats, it's going to have effects. And I mean, like the state you're in is already going to compromise your hormones more than likely. But truth be told, I would rather just pull from somewhere else. If it's like a temporary thing, if they're just like, hey, we really want to dig 6 weeks out, 5 weeks out, but then like weeks 3, 2, 1, we're going to bring food back up. Maybe it's worth it there. I don't love it. Okay, this is good. It's not a question, kind of a question, but I'm going to weigh in on it. Okay, so it just says we're screwed. That's the title. And then it's the picture from, gosh, it's going to kill me. The Italy show. Caption reads, "I'm sorry, what the fuck is happening? How is this bikini?" And it's just for reference, it's the top 6. So it's their comparison, their front and back. Continuing. If I was scrolling and didn't read, I'd literally think that this was wellness. As a bikini athlete, it's almost become impossible to figure out what the judges want nowadays. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. It's one of those things, like we know with international shows, there's less competitors who compete. There's less people who fly overseas from the States who I would say like have a good foothold on like the US standard, which I would say is a little stricter than the international standards, I mean, across continents. And specifically when we're looking at Europe, I've heard this from many European athletes that it's very hard for them to know how to come into shows because they want to ultimately get feedback and they want to know how they should come for the Olympia if they're qualified. But at the same time, they know that they're going to be competing against girls who could be rewarded for not fitting the standard. They could be rewarded for being too conditioned, having too much muscle. And I'll say, like, I saw this post, I think last night, and it was kind of like, yo, like, I mean, but to be honest, I felt that way, like looking at a lot of the shows, even in the States, I'm like, these glutes are ridiculous. Like they're so dense. I'll say there's a lot of adductor that I see amongst a few of the competitors, and like globally, like I do feel like the division's becoming denser and denser, and knowing what athletes are taking in terms of drugs, it's very discouraging. Like it's discouraging because it's like, I don't even want to like, I'll take a little bit of drugs, but like, I don't want to abuse them. And like, y'all are just like outright abusing them. Like that's, I don't know. It's going to be tough. I did just record the video, earlier today talking about the new point system and how I actually think that's going to be more of a problem because it's now requiring people to stay leaner longer. And truthfully, like it's raising the level of competition. I wish I had said that in it. But it's making it to where people are going to have to be more competitive, which what happens if you need to be more competitive, you probably lean on the things that made you competitive in the first place. Not a knock, just the truth. And in a lot of ways, there are people that are using these things more so as a compensation than actually using them when is best to use them. I don't know. I think it's something that if you're competing overseas, you just have to know that the standard for what's going to be judged and what's going to be awarded could be different than what you're seeing in the States. So just keep that in mind if you are traveling. I'm not saying she's talking about the density, which I very much agree with. All right, question number 3, PCOS and bodybuilding. Anyone with PCOS able to get stage lean? If so, was it more difficult than you thought it would be? I'll weigh in on this. So PCOS, by definition, it is going to encompass someone with likely a higher degree of circulating androgens naturally. There are ways that PCOS is diagnosed, but that's one of the key distinctive markers. Now, that can be DHEA, that can be testosterone, that could be DHT. There are absolutely women in the sport who have PCOS and get stage lean. I don't think that it necessarily is a disadvantage in the way that low testosterone would be. What you're describing, though, is a very real concern for PED users, because it's not so much a matter of like, oh, my test is 50 with PCOS naturally, even as I, age, and I find that it's not impacted whatsoever biologically the way you would expect. It's more so the symptoms that come with PCOS that I find athletes really struggle with, because in the presence of anabolics, you're going to raise these levels. And if you have someone who's already pretty sensitive to androgens as a whole, and like even the ratio of androgens to estrogens, if naturally you're kind of biased more towards androgens, you might find that symptoms related to acne, darker hair growth, even just like having a deeper voice, even having, I would say, just more real estate anatomically, like these things are exacerbated by using an anabolic. So I do think in that sense, you have to be careful in using anabolics, and even more specifically DHEA, because it's not going to just change testosterone. And you might find that even just raising testosterone by 20 points or 30 points, that might be so aggressive for you that you do put yourself in a range where you're symptomatic now. Now, I would say you're favorable in the sense like that hormonal profile is favorable, because just having a higher degree of circulating androgens is going to mean you have a higher chance of muscle retention as opposed to having low test. But I don't think it's something, depending on the state your hormones are in, that you just have to write off and be like, I have PCOS, I'm not going to be able to get stage lean. I think if anything, that is in some ways an advantage. Question number 3, menstrual cycle. Question number 4. I think we're at 4, maybe 5. Menstrual cycle during show week. I'm about 10 weeks out, and I know I'll be on my period during my first show. I bloat big time. I've seen meds advertised that allow you to delay your period. They're geared towards women wanting to travel period free. Does anyone have experience with this? I'm afraid to add anything into my routine, but know how much water I retain. All right. I'm glad I caught this one. And I really hope, Emily, if you could make this a clip, because this is like money right here. So those drugs that you're referring to, the vacation like pill, essentially, the ones that, I mean, like in my generation, we were like kind of like peddled this as like, oh, if you have prom or something, like here's a way to stop it. It is synthetic progesterone. Now, synthetic progesterone will actually have the opposite effect of what bioidentical endogenous progesterone will have. It can increase water retention. So I wouldn't necessarily say you should lean on that, especially going into a show. I certainly wouldn't lean on it for the first time going into the show, just given the fact that like you don't know how you're going to respond. It's something that a lot of us who've competed a while have dealt with. Sometimes you get your period show day. I can say Republic of Texas, I have an IUD, I have a copper IUD. So like my heavy days are heavy. Like it is a detriment to my day and my schedule. It's only one day. It's worth it because it's non-hormonal, and that is very important to me. But the Republic of Texas, that show, I mean, like I was getting off stage and I was like, if I don't go to the back, like if I was like a minute later, it would have been a bad day for me. Like I would have had a slew of problems. Now, if we're talking about just bloat, a lot of athletes are really like honest about like, hey, I do my best to kind of time my show in around my period, so I'm not like hitting the stage when it's at its worst. And I feel for you. Honestly, I've had shows where it's like that PMS, like where it's just like you feel bloated, you feel weighed down. It's not to say that you should use a diuretic, especially if it is specific to water weight. But the best diuretic, if we're going pharmacological, is going to be increasing your water intake. So that's something for all my athletes that know that they're going to be on their period. I'm like, we should plan that you're going to be drinking a lot of water going into your show. And if we are tapering off, we should do that in a very like small window, like maybe the day of. Even then, if you're finding that you just have more bloat and like you know pre-period, understandable. I would say like even making sure that digestion is regular so you're not adding to the problem. It's not something I would recommend doing like a laxative or using a laxative or doing it like an enema or anything like that. Trust me, like some people will go to very like strong extremes to beat a bloat or beat their stomach feeling full at all. I wouldn't go that extreme, but I would make sure, I mean, you're 10 weeks out. Like, I don't know if you ever see this, which you probably won't. You're probably going to be close to show. At that point, I would say like make sure you're going very regularly and you have a regimen in place for what helps you go. And you know, like, hey, if I don't do these things, then I'm probably going to be backed up. Honestly, that's the best advice I can give. I'm not going to tell you to take a diuretic. I think that's a little unnecessary, and it's a lot unnecessary to be honest. But in the instance that, you know, you are considering some kind of like delayed pregnancy pill, I would just be very clear on what the ingredients are. And if it is synthetic progesterone that's being offered, I wouldn't take that. That's going to only make things worse.